How's it going out there, YouTube? Long time no see. I just got through streaming earlier today, and this is my second stream of the day. And we are going to talk about episode 3 of Ahsoka. The Ahsoka series, as you know, last week started. And we saw episodes 1 and 2. And then last night, around 9 o'clock, because they release on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 6 p.m. Pacific, the episode releases, and so it released on Disney Plus, and I watched it and so forth, and I'm going to give you my thoughts today on this. We're going to go through a few things, some things I want to speculate about, some things I want to talk about in the episode. I overall didn't really not like this episode. It was okay. But I will be honest. The first thing about this episode, it still has that weird slow pacing, as the first 2 episodes did. I mean, it picked up a little bit, but at the beginning, it still had that slow pacing. So much so, when I was stressed out watching it last night, I'm just being honest. I fell asleep a little bit during it, and I had to go and start over and watch it again at a later point. Which I've done. So I don't know if I was tired or if it was just because it's moving slowly or a combination of both. It may have been. Who knows? Never know with this little penguin. But anyway, let's get into it, shall we? And we've got, of course, there's the part where, they recap what's going on. There's a big giant honking hyperdrive that's being taken from this place. Hera chases it down. There's Chopper. I like Chopper. I'm very partial to droids anyway, but of course my favorite droid is still R2-D2, even though Chopper is pretty funny in Rebels, and it's good to see him in live action too. That's just really kind of cool. There's the big honking hyperdrive that they put in this giant ring that Morgan Elsbeth is building. And actually, we find out later on in this episode what that really is. And I will put up the spoiler sign when we actually start talking about stuff about episode 3, just in case you haven't seen it. But hello, you did click on this video to watch, and it is about episode 3. A live review. So just telling you the whole thing is going to be pretty much spoilers. And then, of course, we got the intro. And we start off seeing Ahsoka and Sabine both traveling on the ship to the Deneb system. They're going to go look for Ezra, like it was at the end of Star Wars Rebels, and also at the end of episode 2 in the live action. So it just this kind of picks up where Rebels left off. And last we saw, just in case you didn't know, I need to move that. One moment. There we go. It was blocking me. I'm not a spoiler. I'm a penguin. Anyway, the where Rebels left off was Ezra Bridger and Thrawn were in a fight, and they got transported via a hyperspace window to approximately around where the Deneb system is, a little bit further than that, out in unknown space. So Ahsoka and Sabine at the end of Rebels, once again, was going to go and track down Ezra. And that's what most of this episode is about. Hey, RPG, how's it going? Anyway, uh, so we see right here, Sabine looks like she's getting ready to do some of her training, and Ahsoka is walking her through some of this. She is going up with Huang, who used to train other Jedi as well. Uh, cool, you just finished doing laundry? I still got to do laundry. That's later on. I normally do that over the weekends and so forth. But let's see here. So these aren't real lightsabers. These are just kind of like holographic sensors, from what I can tell. And Hurong, voiced by David Tennant, which sounds weird because it sounds like the Doctor Who is telling Sabine what to do. But he's giving off these commands and I don't know if that's like Japanese or what. It might be because what she is wielding in her hand, is a thing called a Boken sword, which I will show you what a Boken sword is. I've actually, when I studied martial arts years ago, I actually got the chance of playing around with one. I've not really seen them per se, but that is uh, a Boken sword. It is a Japanese wooden sword used for training in Kenjutsu. Uh, Let me zoom in here so you can see it a little bit better. And as you can see right there, there is the various different types of boken. They look like samurai swords, but they're made out of wood, and they're made for uh, basically training. Sometimes they're made out of redwood or white oak or bamboo, and they're made to be flexible so that basically you're not really, if you do make contact with the other person you're sparring with, you don't necessarily whack the snot out of them. But so let me get back to this. So I think it's kind of cool that we do see Sabine being trained to be a Jedi by Ahsoka. Uh, it has been, now, of course, I'd wish we'd seen baby Grogu being trained by Luke, but you only got that one episode in the book of Boba Fett, and it wasn't a whole lot. Uh, but we did get to see some training, but here we're seeing a little bit more. Because if you watch a little bit further on here, at the end of it, of course, Huang, they're not lightsabers, they're like holographic sensors. And those are supposed to represent like her slices with the Boken sword to see if whether or not she's making good progress or not. And of course, Huang says she's not. He thinks she's the terrible, most worst Jedi he's ever seen or trained. Uh, and of course, Sabine is not surprised she's out of tune, and so is Ahsoka. Ahsoka's not surprised by this, uh, simply because she knows that Sabine doesn't really know anything about really being a Jedi per se. Uh, and actually, all the mechanics and everything, there's a statement that Ahsoka tells her that all of the stuff that she's actually learned through this has been mostly because of her being a Mandalorian, which Mandalorians are warlike culture. They do know how to use weapons and swords and all types of other gadgets and stuff. So anyway, then there is a. Let me pause through this. Then there's a part in her training which kind of harkens back to when Obi-Wan, old Ben at that time, on the Millennium Falcon back in New Hope with Luke. And he gives him that blaster helmet that the shield's down. So this is another shield helmet here, and wanting her to kind of do this blindly and to listen in and tune in on what her surroundings are. To go through and spar with Ahsoka with not using her eyes, but using her other senses. in the hopes also could try to fine tune her skills and get in tune with the Force. Because one of the things I don't like when it comes to things we talked about even earlier today in Star Wars on Trial about how this is what's different from Sabine and Rey Skywalker. Rey, the first time we see her in The Force Awakens, she's like magically able to do all this stuff without really even thinking about it. That she's never piloted a starship, and she's able to pilot the Millennium Falcon very expertly, able to use a lightsaber with relatively ease, use the Force without hardly any problem, and she's never been trained. At least here, they're harking back to the way the Force was always done in the past. It is a lifelong process of discipline, focus, being in tune with the Force, letting it flow through you, using it, letting it guide you, as like what a Jedi does. So that you see that like with Luke when he was trained on Dagobah with Yoda. You saw also someone with Anakin being trained as well in the prequels. And it's nice here to see that Sabine is being trained by Ahsoka, who was trained by Anakin actually, because Ahsoka was Anakin's, aka Darth Vader, Anakin's master, Padawan. Sorry, she was Anakin's Padawan, and Anakin was the master of Ahsoka. So, she's encouraging her to listen to her voice, feel the presence. This helps them get in tune with the Force. We saw that with Ben and Luke on the Millennium Falcon, and we're seeing it also here with Ahsoka and Sabine, which is kind of cool. I did like this part of the episode. See what else we got here. They're still fighting. Then, of course, we see the splash screen after Ahsoka knocks Sabine on her butt, which it doesn't come easy. It's not supposed to come easy. It's the Force. It's not something that you gradually know how to do. Then it cuts away after the title screen to seeing some A-Wings, which I'm glad to see those again. Those are kind of cool. I am a major ship lover. So I like the ships in Star Trek. I like them in Farscape, Stargate. I especially love them in Star Wars because they're so unique and so forth. And of course, then we see Hera Syndulla, and she's talking with Chancellor of the Republic Senate, Chancellor Mamatha, and several of our senators using holographic. The one thing that bothered me a little bit about this particular episode, they didn't come right out with the identity politics and the gender swapping and stuff, but it's clear they did that because among these senators, I mean, look at that. You see any type of particular, well, I'm just going to say it, white male. It's because they are trying to push this, modern Star Wars, like we talked about earlier today in the Star Wars trial, is pushing agenda, is pushing politics instead of a good story. Now, the cool thing about this scene, though, was they didn't bring up any politics except for the politics that are actually in Star Wars itself, like, giving resources and so forth to help Hera, who Hera claims that Thrawn is ready to come back and take over from the Imperial forces, Grand Admiral Thrawn. And this is loosely based, I mean very loosely based, on the Timothy Zahn book series of Heir to the Empire. And apparently I saw a video earlier today that watched that they did consult a little bit with Timothy Zahn himself about some of this, Dave Filoni and so forth, when they created the Ahsoka series. And he gave a little bit of his thoughts on, not a whole lot. But nevertheless, we see Harris trying to convince them to give her more resources so she can go to the Deneb system where Ahsoka and Sabine are already heading. And what's happening is in the interim with this, the Senate is pointing out to the fact that she's actually not hid the fact that Harris really wasn't looking for Ezra Bridger. So that's kind of really the gist of it. They kind of call her on it. And Hera makes it clear that, she may be looking for Ezra, but at the same time, she's concerned about Thrawn being a new threat to the new Republic. And that's what the rest of this discussion's about. They do ask about Hera's son, Jason, which we do get to see him. And wait a minute. Let me find a good picture of him here. There he is right there. Notice he's got a little green hair, and I think they kind of matched his hair with maybe like her green tendrils, or being Twi'lek. But if you remember from Rebels, I don't know if you've seen Rebels or not, but I would hope so if you're watching this series, because it helps to understand a little bit more. But his father, Jason, is Kanan, the Jedi that eventually went blind and eventually gave his life to save Hera and all of them. So Jason's actually his son. He's actually the son of Hera and Kanan, because they're kind of an item in Rebels. But it's kind of cool that he's finally made an appearance in the show. I don't know what they'll do with him. I don't know if at later some point he may become a Jedi like his father. I don't know. And here we have a nice little discussion I like between Ahsoka and Sabine. And I like the fact that Ahsoka, once again, just drives home the point that it's not a overnight process that you're going to be able to master the Force, that it doesn't work that way, that it takes time, it takes years, takes decades, a lifetime to master the Force, to understand it. And she's thinking with the Sabine just kind of in a hurry, like she was in Rebels a little bit. She always kind of acted without thinking. And she's urgent about the situation, and she just wished that her Force powers would come into play. To be honest with you, I'm kind of surprised with this, because Rebels, she was never even hinted at as being Force sensitive. So obviously that is a change here in the live action. And obviously even more because Ahsoka is taking her on, as we saw at the end of episode 2, she called Sabine's Padawan. And technically Ahsoka doesn't consider herself a Jedi anyway, because she never finished in Rebels. Well, actually, even in the Clone Wars, she walked away from the Jedi Council when she was accused. She walked away from Anakin. And she's what the universe normally calls like a gray Jedi, to where she doesn't really have an allegiance to the Jedi Council, and she's not a Sith. So anyway, they're having a nice little discussion about the Force and so forth, and Ahsoka's able to focus and bring that cup over, as you can see right here, and telling Sabine that the Force is in everything. It's even in her, and that she's just got to learn how to sense it and to use talent and training and discipline and focus to control it, to do what she wants with it, like what Ahsoka's doing here with just moving the cup, using it as a visual illustration to teach Sabine. But I like the fact that Ahsoka didn't say, well, you should be able to do it right now, or the writers that wrote this did not make it to where Sabine automatically was a Jedi and she's the bestest ever. I like the fact that she's having to learn this along the way. She's a Padawan, just like every other Jedi is. Now, granted, she's a lot older than what she should be. She's way older than even Anakin was when Anakin was taken on as a Padawan. As we know in the prequels, the Jedi Council said that he was too old to be trained as a Jedi, and they wouldn't let him be trained as a Jedi. There's no way, and Hawaiian on their trip to Deneb, when they get in the cockpit here in a minute, actually says that Sabine, because he's programmed with the old ways of the way Jedi used to be trained, the robot Huang says that she would never even be qualified to train as a Jedi. It wouldn't be allowed. This face right here kind of annoys me because she looks like she's like, I should be able to just do this. I don't know, that just bothered me a little bit. The one thing I can say is I love Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka. To me, she still feels like Ahsoka, has her mannerisms, moves like her, talks like her a little bit, although a little bit slower. Maybe that's because of maturity. I don't know. But Sabine, to be honest with you, it doesn't feel like the same Sabine that's in Rebels. I don't know if that's because of the actress or the way she was written or what it is, but she feels a little bit at times like she's got a little bit of entitlement to her. That not necessarily a space Karen like Morgan Elsbeth's character is. I mean, like the character Morgan Elsbeth, but more like along the lines of she just feels like, why couldn't this just already happen? Why can't I already just be a Jedi and be done with it and just move on? That type of thing. Like she's uber annoyed. Thinks she should be able to be there already, but anyway, we're moving on. There's Huang again, and they eventually get called by Hera via normal Star Wars hologram. This is the conversation that basically Huang is telling her that Sabine would not even be chosen to be trained as a Jedi, and Ahsoka, who doesn't consider herself to be a Jedi either, has said, I don't need her to be a Jedi. I just need her to be herself and to learn the ways of a Jedi. And I think it's kind of interesting here that the comment is made that by Huang to Ahsoka, well, Sabine is being trained from a non-traditional Jedi lineage. Harking back to Anakin was not traditional either. I mean, look, he was older than what he should have been. He also did not do things in the Clone Wars, as well as toward the end of Clone Wars, especially like in season 7, to where Anakin did things that were unconventional that no Jedi themselves would really consider doing. He skirted the line, as we saw obviously with episode 3 of the movies, Revenge of the Sith. He obviously eventually turns to the dark side. We know that he becomes Vader. And Ahsoka is a product of Anakin's training. Even if she didn't finish it, she still learned quite a bit from him, or just being around him. I'm guessing that's also where she learned how to really, later on in this episode, be a very good pilot. Because Anakin was an extremely good pilot. And we see that in his son, Luke. Luke is a good pilot as well. Anyway. So we see a moment here to where Sabine tries to tap into the Force. I think this is good. This scene right here is. Because ultimately, she's not able to pull the cup over to herself with the Force. Even says right before she goes up to the cockpit that you win this time, talking to the cup. I think it's cool that they saw that she still got a journey to learn how to be a Jedi. That she still has to undergo training. That it's not just something that has been handed to her that she didn't earn. That she's having to earn it. She's having to do it the hard way. That is the core, in my opinion, of the way the Jedi Order is. That's why they're stoic, they're focused, they're disciplined, they're learning to control their emotions. It's like Yoda used to say that the emotions lead to the dark side. They lead to suffering. They lead to pain. And that's controlled in a Jedi. To the point to where they're able to control that and tap into the Force because of it. And Sabine still here is very, very emotional. She's still very raw in her emotions. She's still thinking very much like a Mandalorian, and it's good to see that they did this correctly. No, she's not able to pull it off. And then, of course, they're still on their way to Deneb. There's Hera talking to them, and she's having to tell the bad news to Ahsoka and Sabine and Huang that she's not coming. She didn't get the resources from the Senate. Of course, Sabine then gets upset about that again. Not still showing once again that she doesn't have control of her emotions like she needs to as a Jedi. Still very raw, and that basically those two are on their own. Hera's not coming, at least as it is right now. Uh, they sense something on the scanners, and they drop out of hyperspace far away from planet. Uh, I don't know what that look is for. I don't know if she's looking at sensors or what it is, but it looks goofy. Anyway, uh, they notice that there's a second object that seems to be much larger on the other side of the planet. So, as most Jedi do, they want to investigate because they're curious on whether or not this is like probably something from the Empire or something, or what remains of the Empire there at this point. Because once again, this is all taking place about like 5 or 6 years after the Return of Jedi, before Force Awakens. Next thing you know, as we're traveling there, we see that they've got in Hati, I think it's Balin's uh, apprentice, the Dark Lord, Dark Jedi apprentice is Balin Skull. His apprentice Shin Hati she is flying a group of like 6 ships. I wonder if I can see that. 2 squadrons of 3. There they are. There's the ships that came out of nowhere. They're tracking them down, obviously because they're there to probably protect this big giant ring that's on the other side of the planet that we're going to see here in a minute. Then Ahsoka has Sabine jump into there's Shin Hati right there. Has Sabine jump into the tail gunner, which reminds me of the guns that are on the Falcon, when Luke and Han had to jump in them to take on ships. So there's a little bit of nostalgia going on here with all this. I don't know if it's necessarily nostalgia bait. It does seem to have a purpose and a point to it. They've got to lose these ships that are attacking them. So Ahsoka starts doing some fancy flying, while Sabine is shooting in the rear to try to break free from these ships that are chasing them. All this so they can go and find out what's going on the other side of the planet. As you can see, there's more of that. There's the harkens to like even the same display that's similar to what it was in the Falcon. You know, the heads-up display, and the ship comes into focus, so they can use the 2 cannons to kind of shoot at them. They do some fancy flying. Ahsoka does. I do like this ship. I liked it in Rebels, and I like it here. It's got that wing that kind of goes vertical. It reminds me of a B-wing bomber, but then it also goes flat when they go to land, or actually can spin around and so forth if it needs to. And Ahsoka does some of that, to bank left, to bank right, and then drop down and pull back up, do some fancy flying maneuvers to try to get these ships and the gun sights of Sabine's cannons, take them down. And then we see right here, we see Morgan Elsbeth is on the big giant ring thing that we saw at the end of episode 2. and that's where they're heading. As you can tell right here, they're heading toward this ring, and we'll find out what this ring is here in a minute. I'll tell you what it is because they actually reveal in the episode what it is. But before that, I want to talk about this guy right here. I want to pause for a moment of reviewing this video and talk about what I think and who I think this is. This is a guy named Merrick, or Maroc, sorry, not Merrick, but Maroc, that is following around Balin as well as Morgan and Sean or Shinhati. He's flying one of the ships right now that's chasing after Ahsoka and Sabine. He's also an Inquisitor, as we saw in the first 2 episodes that he has the dual-bladed lightsaber with the ring in the middle that can actually spin and rotate around. I'm wondering, because of his name being Maroc, sounds very similar to the name of Merrick. And if you don't know, there is a character in 2 Star Wars video games called Star Wars The Force Unleashed and then also The Force Unleashed 2, that an actor named Sam Witwer plays a guy named Galen Merrick, a.k.a. Star Killer, who is raised as a little kid, has extremely high Mandalorian count, and can almost control the Force without hardly thinking about it. So powerful that Vader takes him on as his apprentice, going to use him to kind of hide him from the Emperor to eventually overthrow the Emperor, because that's just the way the Sith, they always kind of do this to each other. So, needless to say, I wonder if this guy we're looking at right here is, they call him Maroc, but what if it's Galen Merrick, a.k.a. Star Killer, a.k.a. Sam Witwer, the actor? And Sam Witwer has been involved in one way or another in a lot of Star Wars, especially the Clone Wars. He voiced Darth Maul, or actually just Maul at that point. He has also been involved in, like I said, those 2 video games. And if you look right here at some of his outfits in the game, which I love this game, I've played it. Look at this one right here. Doesn't that look very similar to this character? Just a little bit. And it's not a stretch to think possibly these are just these little penguins, 2 cents worth on this, my thoughts, that he maybe could be Galen Merrick, but who knows? It'd be cool though. The other thing is, and I need to look, and maybe at the end of this, I will see if he's listed. I saw in another YouTube video that another YouTuber had noticed, I think it's Star Wars Theory, had noticed that Sam Witwer was listed in the end credits in this show. So that means he's in the show. And I finally, I find it rather suspect that he'd just be maybe only a voice actor when he's actually an actor. Plus, there's a couple scenes later on that we actually, if you listen, he doesn't say a lot, but he does say, like right here, he's saying "as you wish," talking to Hati, I think that's her name, Shinhati. I always forget her name. Who's leading them, and it sounds like a electronic masked, deeper voice of Sam Witwer, possibly. But then also again, I could be hearing what I want to hear, because I think it'd be cool to see him in this, in Starkiller, finally coming to live action. I know I've watched Sam Witwer play before on Twitch. I follow him sometimes and watch his streams. He is a 100% Star Wars and sci-fi geek. Not only Star Wars, but he loves Star Trek and all this other stuff. So it wouldn't surprise me if he has found a way to get himself in this show. That'd be kind of cool. And then it makes him part of the live action Star Wars, which is kind of cool. Anyway, uh, so we see Ahsoka going up to this giant ring with Sabine, and they uh, get attacked by the ring. The ring shoots at them because Morgan brings on her cannon. She tells her droids to fire up the cannons, and they open fire on Ahsoka and Sabine's ship, and they get damaged. And then you see them right here. They're damaged. They're flying off in this giant ring. Now they are able to figure out before I get into all this. They are figuring out what this giant ring is, and they'll do that on the planet. Because Huang right now has been knocked out in the process when their ship got shot, so they're having to go down and land and do some run some diagnostics, as well as they're needing to kind of see if they can hide while they maybe affect repairs. They got no hyperdrive, no cannons, and of course, Shin Hati and her whatever ships are left at this point are on the way to attack them. Then we see a really cool thing happen that obviously Anakin did this first because that's where Ahsoka learned this. But we see Sabine go, where are you going? Because Ahsoka says, I'll be right back. And she puts on a suit and goes out on the wing with her lightsaber to buy time for Sabine to repair the ship, which is really kind of cool. So you see her with like mag boots, and we see there's a giant ring, of course. And then we see the ships are coming to attack, and there's Ahsoka doing some acrobatics, moving out of the way to block stuff and so forth. And she also loses a little bit. She loses the mag boots and starts floating off just in time for Sabine to fix the ship and move one of the wings up so Ahsoka can land on the wing. And then she makes a really cool maneuver and ends up, the wing comes flipping up like this and ends up going back into the hatch. They take off to go land on the planet. And there's Shin Hati. And they are making their way to the planet. They want to try to get out of this. And on their way down, they run into these gigantic space whales that we saw in Rebels that Ezra Bridger was able to call. I think they're called Purgle, I think. But there's these giant space flying whales, space whales, basically, that Ezra used in the end of Rebels when he was fighting Thrawn and so forth. And so we see them. Now we see them in live action. Obviously, CG, they don't exist, of course. This is Star Wars fantasy, of course, sci-fi fantasy. But nevertheless, it's kind of cool to see that. And there's a good shot of that ship. I love that. Like I said, I love ships. Regardless of the story, I also pay close attention to the ships because I like the looks of them. And of course, they're still chasing her down. There's Shin Hati right there to try to chase them down. They eventually get below the cloud cover and are able to land. Huang comes online. Notice how the wing comes down and they're able to land like this. And then they're sitting here on the planet trying to assess what's going on. They also do, according to quote, standard Jedi procedure, according to Huang, they're going to power down everything once Huang's already been awake. But before they power everything down so they can't be detected, they find out what this little ring is. What this ring is it turns out for Huang, because he did his scans as they went by the ring, that they were able to bring him back online after they'd shut the ship down to hide, And then when they thought the coast was clear and they flew by and were out of range, they powered everything back up, brought Huang back online. That's when he revealed what the scans were. And what it is this giant hyperspace transport ring like this. Uh, and actually, I can show you a little bit more. This is on Wikipedia, which is in my opinion, the go-to source for all things Star Wars for canon and in Legends as well. The hyperspace transport ring was a device that proved hyperspace travel capable for starfighters, and we saw this like with Obi-Wan in the prequels when he used a hyperspace ring to allow him to travel between galaxies because his starfighter didn't have hyperdrive. So he had to use this in order to do that. And then, of course, you saw him detach from the ring and fly on in his special A wing. So that's what this is, except for it's on a ginormous scale, like one they've never seen this large before. I'm thinking, and this is my thoughts, because in the Timothy Zahn series, and even in Rebels, Thrawn has in his disposal a Star Destroyer. Those things are massive. What I'm wondering is if he is wanting to try to use this, or if Morgan Elsbeth is going to use this to try to go and find Thrawn, which is, in my opinion, I think more likely. Doesn't mean that at some point Thrawn may use his Star Destroyer to use this to get about as well between not guess galaxies maybe, I don't know, between larger galaxies or something that a normal hyperdrive could not get you to, because this thing's got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hyperdrives on it. And that one at the bottom is the one that they stole from the Corellian shipyards back in episode 1 or 2, I think it was, last week, basically. And so they're speculating on why they would kind of need something this large. And they're just kind of sitting there in the ship. Then we cut to Baylan Skoll, who is still back where he was, that Jedi, I think it was a Jedi Temple, ruined Jedi Temple, where she met Morgan Elsbeth at. And he's still standing there, kind of waiting. You see him still kind of waiting and pondering. I'm guessing this guy is someone that maybe had followed Thrawn before Thrawn disappeared. Although we didn't see that in Rebels. Either that, or maybe it's somebody that he now sees himself as not really a Jedi anymore, a dark Jedi instead. The difference between a Sith and a dark Jedi, if you remember, I think I talked about this last week, is a dark Jedi is still someone that adheres to the Jedi teachings. He's just no longer following the Jedi way. Where a Sith is actually studying Sith teachings. Now, a dark Jedi is kind of like a shade between a gray Jedi and a Sith. So they're kind of selfish. Oh, I see them as kind of like selfish and self-serving Jedi. And I think that's what he is a dark Jedi here, that kind of has maybe his own agenda and also maybe wanting to side up with Thrawn, or what's left of what he feels is the Empire, so forth. So anyway, and that's pretty much it. That's the end of the episode. Let's see if we can't. I want to see here, maybe in the credits. Oh, it didn't. It okay. I want to look, see if I can find Sam Witwer's name, maybe. It shows that he's tied to this. I think it's in the smaller credits. Oh, let's see here. I'm just kind of reading through this to see if I could see it or not. And they may not have included it on every episode, or it may be on an episode that we haven't seen yet when they actually finally list it, and maybe when they decide to reveal who he really is. Uh, Obviously, they want to keep their cards close to their vest. So there it is, right there. Additional voices. Sam Witwer. Now, could that actor be playing underneath the hood and it could actually be Sam Witwer himself, or if he's just lending his voice? They're leading you to believe that he's just lending his voice, but maybe, like I said, maybe Galen Merrick. That would be kind of cool if it was, seeing Starkiller. That's just my speculation. I don't know that for a fact. Uh, just something to kind of ponder. I thought that was all kind of interesting. So anyway, that's the end of my review on this. And I encourage you to, if you haven't seen the episode yet, go ahead and I'd say go watch it. It's got some stuff that is moving the story along. Like I said, especially the Jedi training stuff, I kind of liked seeing Ahsoka training Sabine. But then at the same time, it still, like I said, had that weird slow pacing to it. I'm hoping maybe they'll make it a little bit faster paced here soon. I almost feel like it's like they're harkening back to what they did in Andor. Andor is very slow paced. Andor had a Star Wars feel to it, but it's very slow paced. And this at times has a Star Wars feel to it, and sometimes it doesn't. I do like the effects. I can tell that they're actually using real props and not doing CGI on everything. It doesn't feel like they're in the volume all the time, which is kind of cool. So I'd be curious to know your thoughts, what you thought of the episode, what you had to think of the Ahsoka series so far. Please feel free to leave your comments down in the comment section under the description here. And if you like what I said here, give me a like and a subscribe. That always helps me be able to get noticed a little bit more on this channel so we can get more Penguin Star Wars craziness out there in the YouTube world. So if not, I thank you for watching and listening so far, and I will see you again later. And as always, I'm the crazy, geeky little Star Wars penguin named What About Bob, and may the fish be with you. Later, peeps.